Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. In this video we are going to practice using the comparative or making comparisons in Spanish, and we are going to focus on comparisons of inequality. So we're comparing two things that are not equal. So remember to study the topic in your textbook. There's also a grammar tutorial video. If you're joining us from outside of the class and you don't have any materials, you can just Google the topic, making comparisons in Spanish, and you'll find some great YouTube videos that explain how all of this works. When you're ready to practice, then come here. So let's go ahead and get started. Just a quick review of the formula for making a comparison. In Spanish, we use an adjective with the words either más que, which mean more than, or menos que wrapped around it. So you will insert the adjective between the más que or the menos que. For example, if I take the adjective grande, which means big, and I put the más que around it, más grande que literally means bigger. In English, we normally will add an ER to an adjective. Sometimes we will have exceptions where we say more with the adjective. So for example, more fun as an example of a comparison that's a little irregular in English. So let's practice now. How would you say nicer? If I use the adjective simpático, remember the formula is más que for this one. Más simpático que, más simpático que. Keep in mind if whatever you're comparing, if the noun that you use first is a grammatically feminine noun, then instead of simpático, we would say simpática, más simpática que. So you have to make your adjectives agree with the first noun that you mention. So we have más simpático que or más simpática que. So let's go ahead and add that form in here. Again, más simpático que, más simpática que. Now you may ask, why do I have the que in parentheses here? Well, the que will come into play if you actually mention both things you're comparing. If I just wanted to say, for example, John is nicer, then I would say John es más simpático. But if I wanted to say John is nicer than Fred, for example, then I would say John es más simpático que Fred. So the que is the equivalent to the than that we use in English. Okay. So let's go on to the next example, newer. So we start with new, which is nuevo, right? So newer, más nuevo que or más nueva que. Más nuevo que, más nueva que. How about bigger? Think of your adjective first. ¿Cómo se dice big? Grande. So bigger would be más grande que. Now grande is one of those adjectives that is one form for the masculine and the feminine, so we won't have another form. It's just grande. How about taller? So we start with alto or alta, which is tall. Más alto que or más alta que. Or simply más alto if you're not mentioning both things that are compared, or más alta. Like, I could say, Juan es más alto. Juan is taller. Or Maria es más alta. Maria is taller. If you include the other person being compared, then you would use the que and then that other person. So, for example, Juan es más alto que Pedro. Juan is taller than Pedro. Or Maria es más alta que Mónica. Maria is taller than Mónica. Shorter. So short in terms of height is bajo, baja. So we have más bajo que or más baja que. Now, interestingly enough, you can use the opposite adjective with the menos que. For example, in order to express the idea of shorter, I could literally say más bajo que, which literally means more short than, or I could use the menos with the alto, so menos alto que, which literally means less tall than. And this is probably more common in Spanish than it is in the English-speaking world to use kind of the opposite adjective. Más alto que, menos alto que would be shorter than. So I could either say, Jaime es más bajo que Luis. So Jaime is shorter than Luis. Or I could also say, Jaime es menos alto que Luis. And it essentially means the same thing. He's shorter. Okay, so this is the way that it works with most adjectives. You just use the más que or the menos que. However, there are a few adjectives that are exceptions, and these are the adjectives here. If you're talking about age, and we want to express the idea of younger or older, we have special forms for those, also for better or worse. So you start with the adjective, for example, joven is younger. We generally wouldn't say más joven que. We have a special word for that, which is menor. And then older, we don't use, instead of using the adjective old, we won't say más viejo que. Instead of that, well, it's an exception. We just don't say más viejo que. We say mayor que. Okay, so here are the first two examples. Younger would be menor que, and older would be mayor que. So whenever you're comparing the ages of people, always use mayor and menor, because they are the exceptions that you have to use. Okay, so for the adjectives bueno and malo, meaning good or bad, this is just like in English. We say good, better, and best. So in Spanish, we don't say bueno and más bueno. Instead of más bueno, we say mejor, which means better. So mejor que would be better than. And then malo, we don't say más malo. Instead of saying más malo, we say peor, so which means worse. So peor que. Okay, so if I want to use más or menos, I can also do it with an adverb or a noun. For example, if I want to say more books than, I would say más libros que, más libros que. With an adverb, rápidamente would be quickly, so more quickly than would be más rápidamente que. So we use the más que with an adjective. We can use it also with a noun, or we can use it with an adverb. Okay, and that's it. That's basically how the comparison works with comparisons of inequality. Just use your más que, your menos que, and either your adjective, your noun, or your adverb between them. In the case of those four adjectives that we talked about, there are special forms, so you just have to memorize those. You have to memorize the mayor que, menor que, and then mejor and peor. And if you do that, then you should be able to use comparisons without any problem. So the next step would be to actually create some complete sentences, and we'll just do a couple of examples here. If I wanted to say something like, a car is more expensive than a bicycle, well, your basic formula is the más que or the menos que. And you have to know your adjective, of course. So expensive, remember, is caro with one R, caro. So if I want to put this all together, I would just start with your word for car, un carro. Your verb es, un carro es más caro que, so more expensive than, and then you end it with your other noun, una bicicleta. Un carro es más caro que una bicicleta. There you have it. Un carro es más caro que una bicicleta. A car is more expensive than a bicycle. Okay, so at this point, if you have some nouns and a few adjectives, you should be able to start comparing them. So let's just do a few more examples very quickly here. A house is bigger than a hotel, or a hotel is bigger than a house. What would you say here? For this one, I would say una casa es menos grande que un hotel. It's literally less big than, which means smaller. So una casa es menos grande que un hotel. I could do it the other way and say un hotel es más grande que una casa. How about a motorcycle and a bicycle and expensive? A motorcycle is more expensive than a bicycle. Una motocicleta es más cara. It has to agree with the gender here. Es más cara que una bicicleta. Una motocicleta es más cara que una bicicleta. A movie and a book and interesting. So which one is more interesting? It's really just a matter of opinion. So we'll go with the movie's more interesting than a movie is more interesting than a book. Una película es más interesante que un libro. Una película es más interesante que un libro. A dog and a cat, and the adjective here is faithful, fiel. Would you say a dog is more faithful than a cat? Okay, let's go with that. How would you say it? ¿Cómo se dice? Un perro es más fiel que un gato. Un perro es más fiel que un gato. A taco and a carrot and delicious. Again, a matter of opinion here, but let's just go with the taco. The taco is more delicious than a carrot. Un taco es más delicioso que una zanahoria. Un taco es más delicioso que una zanahoria. Avión, rápido, autobús. So a plane is faster than a bus. Un avión es más rápido que un autobús. Un avión es más rápido que un autobús. Okay, and I put the exceptions down here at the bottom just so you could practice a little bit with them. A hotel and a tent. So for a night stay, would you say a hotel is better than a tent? Well, it's a matter of opinion, but we'll just go with the hotel here. Un hotel es, remember, we don't say más bueno que, we would just say better, which is mejor. Un hotel es mejor que una tienda. Un hotel es mejor que una tienda. A meeting or a party. And malo. Malo is bad. So which one is... Remember, we don't say more bad. We say worse, just like in English. We have a special form in English. So, una junta es peor que una fiesta. Una junta es peor que una fiesta. A meeting is worse than a party. We're going to compare the age of Pedro and Juanito. So Pedro is older than Juanito. Pedro es mayor que Juanito. Pedro es mayor que Juanito. Now let's do the opposite. Juanito is younger than Pedro. Juanito es menor que Pedro. Juanito es menor que Pedro. Okay, well that's it. You should have a nice little overview now of how comparisons of inequality work in Spanish. Remember, the two big things are, just remember the formula más que and menos que, and then remember or memorize those exceptions. And once you memorize the exceptions, then you pretty much got it. You can make comparisons of inequality in Spanish, no problem. All right, well that's it for this video. Es todo. Adiós.